then let's have the third workshop, which I call Dangerous Gestures. And the reason is quite simple, because gestures can be dangerous, especially when we use them cross-culturally. And that's what this workshop is about. So we'll use some gestures during this workshop, and my apologies in advance if anybody should feel offended. This is just part of the exercise, and of course it's not the intention.
In the church as well.
Yes. So generally when we talk about body language, that's part of communication. And it's estimated that about between 60 and 90% of information is encoded in the visual side of communication, including body language. So that's over half. It depends where you are, who you are, their personal preferences, your cultural background, the media you use, they determine roughly the percentage. So as a Swiss, I'm more reserved in using gestures. For example, if I use hand gestures, typically I keep my elbow stuck to the body. Were I Italian, I would throw my arms around, and that would give a better visual effect. But anyway, also filmmakers know that if they present a hero, they have to be careful to put that the visual portray the character of the hero in the right way. So you can't rely on the language a character speaks in order to determine who the person is. So when we talk about Bible translation and visual communication or body language, that often gets forgotten or downplayed, because there's not much body language happening in the biblical texts. But we've heard if we use visual stories, apps, body language does become a topic. So what is body language? That includes quite a lot. Proximity. So how close do you stand to someone and feel comfortable? It's we probably all have experienced, even in this room, that someone was too close and you wanted to step back, or you felt that person was too far and you stepped closer. And sometimes you can get little dances going on where you move around because of this, and that's just conventions. The way you walk can determine where you come from. I once was in Istanbul with a friend from Belgium, and we walked past the carpet sellers, and there was one seller who shouted to my friend, "You're from Belgium?" Okay, that was interesting. So we actually went into his shop, and we learned that this carpet seller lived in Belgium, and he could see from the way my friend walked that he came from Belgium. Or that's what he claimed. I mean, he also, if you look at him, he sort of looked a bit Belgian as well. But I think he wouldn't have said that. There is something, the way we move, that can give things away about ourselves. Our posture, the way we sit as well. For example, these chairs, they always make me slouch a bit. That has a message. If you cross your legs, that can have a message. In certain parts, you should not show the sole of your foot to others, because that's considered offensive. Greeting, the way we greet, what body parts we use. Now in Corona times, we have to be inventive sometimes, as we can't shake hands. For some of us, it's not that serious that we can't do that. But for others, well, we have to use our elbows or something, because it is important. Eye contact. Do we have eye contact with the people we speak? how much, with whom exactly. So there are many conventions and different things. Facial expression, the way we smile, they all have messages that can be interpreted in different ways in different people. There are countries where people constantly touch each other when they talk, and in other parts of the world where you don't. And then there are different gestures. So there are hand gestures, and that's what we're mainly going to look at. Arm gestures and also head gestures. But just to launch us in our discussions, I'd like to show a little video. It comes from India, and it's gone viral a few years ago, and it shows how gestures work in India. So it's probably or hopefully familiar to you, and maybe a bit less familiar to all of us, but it shows how important gestures are. So let's look at some ideas and gestures between us, and this I need your help for that. So how do you gesture yes and no? Okay, I see nodding. I have seen this. All right. So that's for yes, and for no. Shaking the head. This. Okay, there's this.
Which is like almost a wave.
Yeah. Now if I use both hands, this.
Yes.
So there are various possibilities to say no. So are these universal? No. It's actually interesting that somehow a head gesture to express yes or no is very widespread. But we can't assume that a nod is always a yes, because in Greece and Bulgaria it's the other way around. So that would be no, and that would be yes. And again, in the Middle East, there are some other conventions. So it seems in Saudi Arabia, people shake the head to say yes, and tip the head back to say no. So that would be something like this. That would be no. And there are other conventions. You can use also your hands. You can also use other aspects of your face. For example, there's a people group in Papua New Guinea called Yupno. They pout the lips to say no and make an upward flash with the eyebrows to affirm. So that would be yes, and I pout lips, no or something. Again, I would probably not pick up on these things unless you're tuned in. So the next gesture is the thumb gesture. Someone or a few already said this is says yes, and that says no. Now this is quite widespread, and it's well known, and things like Facebook have popularized it. So I think many people recognize it. But it also means other things.
That aren't so good.
Yes. Yeah.
Really? Oh yeah. Oh. Okay.
So what I found in countries with a British influence, Australia, USA, Singapore, New Zealand, South Africa, you can use it to hitchhike.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, if you're from Brazil, you can say thanks, it seems. Now in my country, Switzerland and Germany, it's the number one. It's how you count, that's where you start. And in Japan, it means 5. So if you're in business, in a business meeting and you have to negotiate figures, you may need to be careful. And as Lisa said, it can be very rude in certain parts of the world, and that's actually not all that uncommon. I think most American presidents are known to have made some sort of issue with their hands in somewhere in the world, and I think the thumb gesture was an issue recently. So in Iran, it's as good as showing the middle finger, and especially if you add a movement to the gesture. In Greece and Sardinia, it means get stuffed. And in other places like Bangladesh, Latin America and West Africa, it's also considered rude. So I don't know if that corresponds to your experience. So again, we have to be careful. Now let's look at another one. Now do you recognize this gesture?
Yeah.
The O gesture.
Yeah.
What does it mean for you?
It's okay. Okay, it's good.
Okay. Yeah. Does anyone have a different idea?
I know it's also an obscene gesture in some countries.
Yep.
I don't use it.
Yeah, so most, I think from the US it's okay. But if you're in, and it's understood in parts of Europe as well, but not everywhere. I think in France, in Belgium, and in Tunisia, it means zero or worthless. So if you are in a restaurant and your French is not good, and you want to indicate to the chef that the food is good, be careful.
Here's a thumbs up.
The same gesture in Japan means money, but it's coin. And in places like Brazil, Russia or Spain, it refers to a private bodily orifice, we could say, and this is why it's rude. And that's also the reason it's sometimes used in places like Turkey and Greece for homosexuality. Again, it's something you have to be careful about. Okay. How do you point? Do you do it this way, or do you have other ways of doing it?
I do it that way.
Yeah, so most use the index finger to point.
Is that one pointing like this? I mean, because there's sideways, sideways or this way.
Well, it's pointing this way.
This way, yeah.
And I think that, that's probably what we...
Stretch your hand out, say it's over there.
Yeah. So certainly in North America, that's the common way of using, and you can point at anything and anyone. In Europe, you already have to be a bit more careful. I've been brought up, my parents said don't point at people because it's not polite. I can point at things. And it's also rude to point with your index finger in places like China, Japan, Indonesia and Latin America. Now in some countries in the Middle East, you don't use your index, but you use your middle finger to point. And of course there you've got issues again. So in many African countries, and that includes Benin, you never point at people with your index finger. You can use to point at things. But if you point at people, you have to use your hand. You can point like this. Or again, you can use another gesture, for example, your chin, while you look at people. And again, other ways, you can use your lips, protrude your lips, so to point. And then there are places like a an Aborigines group in Central Australia. They have 6 different ways of pointing, and each different way means something else. So that's yes. So what does this mean?
Well, there's 2 different ones. There's 2 different ones.
Yeah, victory and peace. So it's been introduced. That is
The one on the left.
the palm out.
That's victory and peace.
Yeah, that it's been introduced by Churchill as victory, and then it's also turned into peace. Now, if you turn your hand around, it can have a different sense, especially in the UK and in places like South Africa, Australia. Again, it's actually quite rude, comparable to the middle finger again. And that's a tricky one, because, well, I can do it, but I know some people don't like it. So if you do this in Germany, that can also be victory. And if you count, well, as a Swiss, I count 1, 2. But in other places, you count 1, 2. And then potentially you swear at people. Yeah, many of these gestures, we just do them and understand them instinctively. And it's sometimes hard to get over them. So there are many more. Let's have another one. This one. What can this mean for you?
Stop.
Mhm.
5. Or 5, the number 5.
Yeah? Talk to the hand.
Me?
Yeah? Waving or waving goodbye. Yeah?
When you want to say something.
You could use that too. Yeah. Or if you use it like this, yeah, it's stop.
But I tend to stop with closed, fingers closed.
That's interesting.
Okay, yeah. Again, different versions of it.
Yeah.
But that these are fairly neutral gestures. But again, of course, it's not as simple. So if you are from parts of Africa, Asia, and Pakistan, it's insulting. So I haven't been able to find out what it is that makes this gesture insulting in certain parts. Now, it seems, from what I've read, in Greece and Turkey, it means basically go to hell. And in Cyprus, it's also rude because it indicates a certain unpleasant substance on your face. Yeah. How do you indicate the height of, for example, your child? Yeah, like this.
She's so big.
You just use both hands. Oh, interesting.
Okay, both hands. Well,
Use one.
yeah, I like this. Okay. Again, that's not quite as straightforward. So in Benin, you would never say my child is this high. You'd have to do it like this, because your child is still growing. And if you do it like this, it's not good. And it seems in many parts of Central America, your palm faces to the side, like this, when you show the height of an animal. So my dog is like this. Now when you show the height of a thing, then you can do it like this. And when you show the height of a corn plant, then you do it like this. So again, interesting. So there could be many other things, gestures that we could look at. But I think as a rule of thumb, the gesture rule of thumb, the pun is intended, of course. Yeah, if you're not totally sure how your finger gestures, and it's often your fingers that are tricky, be careful. So I think here at Crossroads, well, sometimes yes, we make mistakes, but we are also gracious to each other, and I don't think it's a big issue. But it's still a reminder to us that there are issues when we use gestures. And for our work, again, it's quite important, especially when we go into the visual media, that we make sure that we use the right gestures if we use them, and use them at the right time. When we have images made in one place and we want to use them in a different place, we just, well, it's very tempting. Oh, it's a nice picture, let's use it. But again, we first have to assess them and see that they communicate properly. And that doesn't always happen, unfortunately. But we are promoting the idea of testing images as well, in the same way as we test Bible texts that have been translated, as we've seen in the video, because sometimes it backfires. And that's what I had to share with you. Thank you.
Very good.